So hey guys, we got a new arrival to the shop today. It's an 86 944. I'm just gonna walk you around it right quick. Has a little body damage here on the fender, and also has a little more damage around on this quarter panel here. But overall, looks to be a pretty nice car. What we're going to be doing is seeing why it doesn't start sometimes. I believe it has something to do with the reference sensors, so I'm going to go ahead and pop the hood here. Here's a quick look at the interior. See, the engine bay doesn't look too bad. But I think this back here is the issue. I'm going to take all this apart, get all the zip ties off there, and we're going to start checking everything with the multimeter, and hopefully we can get this car fixed up. So I've got the zip ties removed now, and as you can see, this lower wire has a bunch of electrical tape on it. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and get these unplugged, and we're going to test the wiring. So after getting the wires off, I was able to test the sensors. The lower one doesn't have a reading, so I'm going to go ahead and pull it and replace it and see if the car will start up. So I was able to pull this sensor out without any problem whatsoever, and I figured while I'm in there I'd go ahead and replace both, so I've got two brand new sensors right here. Alright, so the other one came out just as easy, so I'm going to put some NECs on these and get them installed. Alright, I've got both new sensors in now, and I figured I'd go ahead and do them both because in a few months, when that other sensor goes out, then he's going to have to tow it back down here and get the other one replaced, and I figured I'd save him all that time. So anyway, he said that the sensor wiring may have been the issue with this, and you can see where he had it taped up, but it actually looks pretty good underneath all that electrical tape. And he said jiggling the wires would sometimes get the car to start, but it was getting to be a pretty big issue where it wasn't starting anymore. So what I'm going to do now that we have the new sensors in, I'm going to go ahead and start it up for you guys. Let's see if it'll start up. Oh yeah, she fired right up. So it's looking like that sensor was the issue. So the next thing we want to look at is the sunroof here. The motor is running, but unfortunately it's not pushing or pulling the cable. So I spoke with the owner and I mentioned that I'm waiting on sunroof parts, and in the meantime he wants me to fix this leak right here at the cam tower. That's going to require taking the belts back off. He says it does have new belts and a new water pump, so all he wants is this leak fixed. I figured I'd go ahead and fix this one back here and we can get the engine cleaned up and make it look nice. Alright, so I've got the upper belt cover off. Everything looks good in here. It does have new belts. They're all lined up with their marks. The tension seems perfect, and there was a lot of new hardware, so everything does look really good. The only thing I need to do now is get this sprocket off so I can change that seal back there. So we have the sprocket off now, and it appears to be the original cam seal and collar there, so there's also a little bit of oil in here, so we might as well change that as well. Alright, so we got everything pulled apart, and as you can see there's some scoring on the cam here. I asked the owner what he wanted to do, if he needed me to pull the cam to make sure that the rest of the cam wasn't scored up, and he just wants me to put it back together, so that's what we're going to do. Down here you can see that the scoring has utterly destroyed this housing, so we're going to replace it with this one here. I've got the new rear seals on. I also replaced the front seal and the collar. Once I get it on, I'm also going to be installing a new bolt. Alright, we just got to put the upper belt cover on now, and I'm going to do the rear seal and we can start cleaning this all up. So we got the rear cap off now, and it was leaking pretty badly, mainly because one of the bolts was missing and the other two were not very tight at all. But we got the new seal here, and we're going to replace that bolt and get everything done right. So I got everything back together and fired it up. I don't see any oil leaks, so I went ahead and cleaned everything up. I replaced this bolt since the old one would not go in all the way. And while I was cleaning things, I found that this bolt here is not the correct one, so I might go ahead and get that out and replace it, and then we'll be done with the engine. Alright, well, I was getting ready to swap this bolt out here, and as you can see, there's a stack of washers up underneath there, so I'm kind of afraid if I remove that, I might be getting myself into something that I don't really want to deal with. So I'm just going to leave that for now. And I'm going to put some zip ties back along the firewall here. You can see that some of them are missing. And I have some zip ties here. I'll show you what one looks like. These are not exactly like the ones from the factory, but they are available at most hardware stores. And you just take them and screw them on right here, and they're pretty close. I've got all the zip ties and this clamp replaced here, and everything looks so much better now. So one of the issues that we're having is that this sleeve should have a tab on the back here, just like the one that's on the front. The front one keeps the sleeve from moving backwards, and it fits into this groove here. And back here you can see this is where the rear one belongs, and that one keeps it from sliding forward when you try and raise the roof. If you look up underneath here, you can see just where the motor has been digging into this sleeve, and so we've got to figure out a way to replace this, and it may require replacing the entire sleeve. So we're thinking that it probably took a lot of pressure to snap that thing off, and if it did, it could mean that something's bound up inside the roof. So we're going to start taking everything apart here and just see what's going on. Alright, so I spoke with the owner about the sunroof issue, and since we're going to have to dig so deep into this thing, it's not worth fixing right now, and so we'll try and get to it at a later date. But as for now, I think this car is pretty much ready to go home. Well, unfortunately, guys, this car left to go home this morning, but it didn't make it very far. When it came in, it did have a bad reference sensor, and the wiring was pretty chewed up, but it tested okay. And he got around the corner in it and just completely quit on him. So as you can see here, there is a giant hole in the battery tray that I wasn't aware of. But once it was sitting on the side of the road, I pulled the computer out because all the wiring tested good, but you can see here that it was sitting in a lot of water. So I got a good rebuilt unit here. We installed that, car fired up, and was back to running. But every time I'd driven this car, it was cold out, so I didn't rev it very hard. But once we got the engine warmed up today, I drove it, and I really wasn't happy with some of the power it was making. It was stumbling at low RPM. So I just decided to bring it back to the shop, and we're going to dig a little deeper. It acts like it has a huge vacuum leak, and I think it's the hose that's underneath the intake here. These were things that I wasn't really aware of before, because it starts up, idles fine, but when you get on it, you can tell that something's just not right. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to pull the plugs. We're going to do a compression test, and we're just going to check this engine over. I told the owner that we're going to fix any vacuum leaks, and we're going to also fix this battery tray. I mean, we could just relocate the computer for now and it would be fine, but that's not the right way to do this. So we're going to cut all this out, install a brand new battery tray, and get this car running the way it should. Alright, here's cylinder number 1. We've got the DME relay pulled, so that way no fuel is going into the system, and I've been holding the throttle open like that. And you can see we got about 130 psi on cylinder number 1. This is cylinder number 2. Go ahead. Hold it to the floor. That time we got about 140 psi on that cylinder. Here's cylinder number 3. Go ahead. Alright. See, we've also got about 140 psi on that cylinder as well. And finally, cylinder number 4. That's good. That one's nearly 150 psi. So I verified that all the vacuum lines are tight, so what we're going to do is put the J-boot back on and swap in another airflow meter. TJ's got everything back together now. I'm going to take it on a short test drive to see if that airflow meter improves the performance. So with that airflow meter, it ran worse than ever, so I've got one more I'm going to try. So we've got another airflow meter on here now that we're going to try out, and if it still runs poorly, there could be an issue with the fueling system. Maybe that's why they removed the cover, to try and dial that out. It did run okay as long as you were in first gear, but once you got to second gear, it ran very poorly. The DME that I installed is a newly rebuilt one, and since both of those computers are doing the same thing, it shouldn't be my newly rebuilt one. So it's probably something to do with the injectors here, or perhaps the wiring. I'm going to start this out, try and take it on test drive, and we'll see what it does. Alright, so it's running a little bit better now, but I'm thinking that there may be an issue with the fueling system. So now that we've ruled out the airflow meter, the next thing I'm going to do is check the injectors. I'm going to first start by checking the fuel pressure here at the rail, and if that looks good, then I'll check the wiring on the injectors. And again, I'm not really expecting anything here since the wiring harness looks to be in pretty good shape, but if all that checks out, then I'll go ahead and pull the injectors and make sure that they're flowing properly. If not, I've got a few that I can swap in, and if I don't see anything wrong with the fuel injectors, then we may be looking at a clogged cat. I'm not exactly sure if that is the issue, but it does get really hot down there underneath, and I can't exactly rule that out quite yet. So we've got the mechanical gauge on here now, and the fuel pressure looks pretty good. So we're going to move on to checking the injectors. So as you can see, the fuel pressure looks pretty good on this car, and I'm not really expecting to see anything wrong with the wiring since it looks to be in pretty good condition and it fires up just fine. But we could have some clogged injectors, so I'm going to go ahead and pull the rail. I've also got that bolt replaced now, and this is the one that I removed. As you can see, must have been a little too long, and they used a stack of washers to offset it. Alright, so Patrick got the fuel rail off and removed the injectors. You can see here that this one appears to be leaking, and this one here has a bad O-ring. So we're going to replace these with some rebuilt ones here and see if the car runs a little bit better. We did notice a bolt missing here at the fuel rail, and we were going to make sure that it was cleaned out, but as you can see, there's no thread left. So we'll probably tap this out and put a helicoil in it just to make sure everything's done right. The helicoils are installed now, so the next thing we're going to do is get these injectors installed. Alright, so I just installed another set of injectors, and these were cleaned and flow matched a while back, but they sat on the shelf, so nothing's happening now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send his original set off to be cleaned, and hopefully we can get to the bottom of the issue here. Alright, so TJ got the roof panel off of this car so that way we could look at the sunroof mechanism. And if you guys can see that, you can see that there is a screw drilled into that. And there was one on this side. It looks like the cable broke that connects to the arm here, and they just put screws in there to hold the roof down. And that screw goes all the way through the lifting arm. So that's going to be a very good reason why this roof doesn't work. So we're going to have to replace a lot of this stuff to make this roof work again. So those arms being screwed and locked in place is probably why this piece down here broke. So we now have the tube removed. You can see where that piece broke off there and where the motor has absolutely destroyed the sleeve and the cable inside. So alright guys, I pulled a replacement sleeve and cable out of a parts car. You can see that this one is still in perfect condition and the cable still looks really good. It even has this piece still on the end here that's broken off on his. And if you look down here, you can see how this one is missing here on his, and this has been completely chewed up as well as the cable. So TJ's got the new sleeve in. We're getting ready to hook everything up now. So last night we got everything reinstalled and the sunroof is working perfectly now. All right, let's see. All right, we got the battery tray all welded up now and it looks beautiful down in there, just like new. And so today I need to finish up inside here underneath all this. You can see that there was a lot of stuff that just fell in that hole over the years. So I'm gonna get a shop vac and vacuum that out and clean it up a little bit. Up here you can see it also looks brand new. We have the altitude sensor already mounted. And before I can mount the relays for the fan, I'm going to put some heat shrink on these wires and clean them up a little bit. Once that's done, I put the glove box back in, we can mount the DME, and we should be good to go. All right, everything's cleaned up now and looks much better. I now have the DME mounted with all the hardware installed. So next I'll put the wood piece in and we'll be done with that so I can install the glove box. All right, so everything is all back together now. All right, we got everything finished up inside now, and so TJ's installing the injectors we just had rebuilt. All right, TJ's got the injectors in now, so we're gonna try firing it up. Alright guys, it seems that having the injectors cleaned and flow matched has done the trick, since this car is now running as it should. So I was hoping to take this car back home to the owner today, but I discovered during a test drive that the fans were no longer working. And when this car first came in, the fans would run anytime you put the switch in the on position. And I just assumed that he had it rigged that way, so I didn't think much of it. But in retrospect, it could have been all those frayed wires that we found underneath the dash. And once we had that cleaned up, then it no longer caused the fans to run all the time. So what I'm trying to do now is figure out whether it's the relays up here and the fuse box, or if it's an issue with the thermo fan switch itself. So what I have here is a jumper and the thermo fan switch plug. If you can see down in there, I've got the jumper and terminals 1 and 3. So if the relay is bad, then nothing should happen when I turn the switch on. But if the thermo fan switch is bad, then the fan should run full blast. So as you can see, both fans are running full blast, so that tells me that the relay is fine. Another thing that you can test is turn the fans back off, go over here, pull the jumper out, then go back in. You'll see now that the fans are no longer running. And when I turn the AC on, the fans should come on. and they are on low speed, and that is correct. So with the AC on and the jumper removed, they should be running on low speed. That tells me that the relays are working. So the next thing I'll need to do is change out the thermo fan switch. The new thermo fan switch has arrived, so I've got the car up on ramps and we're going to get it in. At the moment I'm dumping the coolant and removing the fans. Alright, I've got the new one in now. Alright guys, I've got the engine up to temp, and as you can see, the fans are running. Alright guys, this car is finally going home today. When it first came in, it wouldn't start due to a bad reference sensor. Once those were replaced and we had the engine running, we fixed some of the leaks. And with the engine finished up, we focused on the sunroof, only to discover it was going to be a lot more work than we first bargained for. So the owner decided he would worry about that later and came to pick the car up. Unfortunately, it didn't make it very far due to a giant hole in the battery tray that we were unaware of, which was letting water run down onto the DME. With a spare DME installed, we made it back to the shop where we were finally able to dig in and get everything fixed correctly. So anyway guys, that's just about going to do it for this video. If you'd like to stay up to date with some of the projects we're working on around the shop, be sure to join us on Facebook. I'll leave a link in the description below. I also want to thank everyone who supports this channel on Patreon, since these videos would not be possible without you. But anyway guys, that's going to do it. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.